Welcome to the Intentionists podcast, where we explore the interplay between intuition, spiritual health, and everything in between. I'm your host, Amy Schreiber.
And I'm Hilary Zwallen. Our intention is to create a dialogue that inspires you to consciously forge your path with curiosity and compassion for life and its mysteries.
Hi, you're listening to episode 70, where Hilary welcomes singer Libby Dorot of OSLEE to discuss the power of music and mantra. She shares her own journey into music, and they talk about creativity as divine communion, her new album, and the importance of developing practices and communities that make you feel held. They dive into many fascinating topics like White Tantra, Kundalini, the Diamond Light lineage, and healing cultural trauma and victimhood on a personal level. Libby Dorot is a classically trained singer and pianist, certified Kundalini Yoga teacher, and Litios Light Priestess based in Los Angeles. Libby began her music career at age 8 when she performed her first role with the Washington Opera as an angel in the production of Mefistofele, and she hasn't stopped since. As soon as Libby discovered Kundalini Yoga in 2014, she fell in love with its transformative power. This inspired her to produce mantra music in her own contemporary style under the moniker OSLEE, which means obey, serve, love, excel, elevate. OSLEE music has been described as Lana Del Rey meets chakra music and the Lady Gaga of mantra. She brings her high-elevation, heart-centered performances internationally at festivals, retreats, workshops, and seminars in the US, Germany, France, Spain, Italy, and more. In 2018, Libby released her first mantra album, Elevate, earning her the acclaim as the next big thing in Kundalini music. Her sophomore album, Songs for My Teacher, was written for and dedicated to renowned Kundalini Yoga teacher and archivist Tej Karakalsa. Songs for My Teacher was just released on February 22, 2020, and is available for streaming and purchase on iTunes, Bandcamp, Spotify, and all other major platforms. And her name is spelled OSLEE when you go to search for her on these platforms. She's also very active on Instagram, so find her there at OSLEE_music. And for all of you in the Los Angeles area, OSLEE is having her Songs for My Teacher album release party this Saturday, March 7th at Rama Institute in Venice. Join her from 7 to 9 p.m. as she synthesizes her areas of practice as a Litios Diamond Light Priestess, Kundalini Yoga teacher, and musician to bring you this magical offering. The workshop will include a meditation connecting with the unicorns using Litios light crystals, live music and dancing, and Kundalini Yoga meditations that correlate with the songs off her new album. You can reserve your spot today by going to the Workshops tab on the Rama website and then selecting Sign Up Now under this workshop. And without further delay, here is Libby and Hilary.
Libby, thank you so much for joining us today. And I wanted our audience to know that she's such a special guest for our show, and we're going to talk about everything from creating and utilizing sound and music as a way to elevate our spiritual practices. We're going to talk a little bit about Kundalini Yoga and what it means to be a Diamond Light Priestess. And we're also going to discuss how all of these practices really help to reinforce one of my personal favorite topics, as anyone who's been listening for a while knows, which is faith, and specifically working through the various stages of a faith crisis. So thanks again for being here, Libby.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Let's start with music. We have a lot of creative, spiritual, and holistic entrepreneurs, as well as intuitives who listen to our podcast. And so I always love talking to people who are in the process of consciously integrating their spiritual and career-based paths. So I'd love for you to tell our listeners a little bit about the creation of OSLEE and your path to music.
Sure. So I guess I began writing mantra music. I had taken teacher training for Kundalini Yoga. And in teacher training, you learn that mantra is exponentially more powerful when recited or chanted in your own voice. And I've always been making music. It's like my outlet for creative expression, or one of the main ones anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just kind of sat down one day and just started making mantra music for myself in the style that I like. And it felt really amazing, to the point that I wanted to share it. I felt like re-inspired and impassioned by it, because I had kind of stopped performing. I had this like difficult time with a family tragedy, and so I just couldn't motivate myself to like go out and perform the music I was making. But when I started making mantra music, something like ignited in me. It like pinged all of the parts of my soul where I was like, oh, this is so, like, I feel so good. This is so fun and enjoyable, and I feel so alive, and I wanted to share it with people. So I created OSLEE.
Such a healing process.
Yeah, it was very healing. Yeah, and OSLEE stands for, it's actually made of two Yogi Bhajan quotes. One is the law of excellence, which is obey, serve, love, excel. And that's obey as in like obey your authentic self, that aspect of you that is infinity. And serve, love, excel, that's more self-explanatory. And then the second quote for elevate is elevate each day, live to elevate yourself. Each day, elevate one person. Make elevation your religion, and you shall reach infinity.
Oh, I love that.
Isn't that amazing?
It's
so those
beautiful.
are like the tenets of OSLEE. And like, you know, when you're an artist and you create a name or your persona or whatever, it's like, it gets to be like the superhero version of yourself. Like, yes, those are all the things I want to embody. That's where I'm going to be at, because I'm going to spend a lot of time in OSLEE, you know, being OSLEE, becoming OSLEE.
I love that. I think that is so, it makes a lot of sense to me too, in what's resonating in terms of building brands, even if you're looking at it in a corporate sense, right? Like, what is it that you are really trying to create, right? And then to your point about mantra being infinitely more powerful when it's in your own voice, you know, how do you speak what you want to create into reality by, I mean, this whole idea of creating these principles that you want to embody as an artist, using it as a name for yourself, and then having it be reinforced by everyone who says it. I think that's really, really a beautiful concept. Wow.
Thank you.
So how did you get started on your path to music?
Oh, when I was little, I had one of those moms who had me try everything, like guitar, ceramics, painting, voice, piano, everything. And the things that stuck was voice and piano. So I was trained classically in voice and piano since I was 8. And that's also when I started performing professionally with the Washington Opera.
Wow. So what was it about the craft that really drew you to it?
About the craft of singing?
Yeah, just like using your voice. Like, what was it? I mean, I enjoy singing, but I've always been terrified to perform singing in front of people. I can do other things in front of people, but I know, so for some people,
I hear that.
The music, you know what I'm saying?
Oh my gosh. That resonates with me, because when I was growing up, when my mom had people over for dinner or anything, she would always make me sing afterwards. She would go to the piano because she was a pianist, and I would have to sing like Bye Bye Birdie. I don't know.
Yes.
And I hated it. Oh my God, I cringed. I was like so embarrassed, and I didn't like singing. Like, I loved performing and singing, but at the same time, I hated it. And like, I just had to get to a point, now that I'm older, where I'm like, oh, this is my divine gift. So every time someone asks me to sing, like 90% of the time I say yes now, because I have to say yes, because that's my gift. That's my way of serving, so it takes me also out of my own like ego place of what's that called? Inferiority complex. It's like, no, get over yourself. This isn't even about you. It's about your God-given gift. You know what I mean?
I love that. And I found, I've just been practicing Kundalini Yoga on a fairly regular basis for about a year, maybe a little more than a year. And I found to be the same when I started incorporating it into my sound healings that I do these at local studios here in town. I was initially fairly self-conscious, because when you just go into like a normal vinyasa class, it's a totally different setup. Not that it can't be like a holy, exalting experience, but to start with a mantra, there was an element of like, are people going to judge me? Am I appropriating things? Like, how is this going to be received? And the more that I just leaned into the use of my voice as a medium for healing for myself and for others, it totally took away the fear. And it's actually helped me to use my voice in terms of like this podcast or with clients or, you know, whatever it is about speaking your truth. I just love how you explain that.
That's amazing. I really feel that. Yeah, because it takes you out of all the 3D kind of like, and the weird thought forms that can come after you. It's like, no, this isn't about me. This is about my gift. This is about my connection to God and to infinity.
And it's really about just speaking truth in its purest form, right? So I want to talk a little bit more about your specific music, which I've really enjoyed. I think it's got such a cool sound. It's very modern and yet it's got the mantra in it. And so how do you see your music in the marketplace, or how would you classify your genre of music for people who maybe haven't heard of you yet?
That's a great question. iTunes also likes to know the answer to that question.
Yes,
you have to
I know.
choose your genre. I usually choose what did I choose? I think world or electronic, or maybe it's electronic world. I don't know. There was a problem with my distribution at one point, and the person who was helping me just pushed it through as Indian pop, which I was like, no, don't call it Indian pop. So I guess it's like,
it's got a little Enya to it, you know, like an echoing of even that, you know, there's some.
Yes. It's like ethereal electronic mantra pop music.
Basically, you're creating a whole new genre is what we're getting to, right?
That's where I was going. That's where I wanted to go with that. Yes.
So great. So mantras and music, I know we touched on that just briefly, but I wanted to talk about the value of the meaning of the word in the mantra versus the sound or the tone. And, you know, as a teacher, do you know, does this matter? You know, what would you tell to people who are kind of starting to explore mantra? Because I think in kind of the Western culture, we use the word mantra loosely in so many ways. It's like, well, what's your mantra? Especially you see it on Instagram now, and people are like, my mantra this year is, which is all fine. I'm saying it in kind of a patronizing voice, but I don't necessarily mean it that way. But the idea that, you know, my mantra is love yourself this year, or, you know, what is your word of the year? Like people are kind of, there's like trends that are moving through social media where they talk about things like that. Right. And I think that can be powerful. But in terms of, you know, mantra,
it's powerful if you put it to work. You don't just say that. You like keep working it.
Right. And so then my question is, you know, a lot of your mantra music has it's Gurmukhi, right? Is that the language? Yes. So how does that, how do people connect with that? How does that matter? Does it matter? Is it the tone? Is it the meaning? You know, where do you lie on that in terms of your opinion on mantra? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So for people, especially for people who are like just getting into mantra, I wouldn't be too dogmatic about, oh, you need to chant it, or you need to, or just listen to it or recite it. If you can infuse your life with mantra, you will see a big difference and transformation in your life. So you don't have to get too hung up about that as a beginner. Oh, and I also wanted to say that the way I think about mantra is that mantra is a series of words, like usually sacred words, that when chanted aloud or recited in your mind, they alter the fabric of reality. So when people are saying, oh, this is my mantra this year, if you keep saying it, whatever you're saying or listening to, it does become interwoven in you, and it alters, like on a molecular level, reality around you. When you say something out loud, you get the opportunity to then hear it, and it like feeds back to your brain, and your brain accepts that as the reality. So when you can chant things aloud, I do think it's more powerful. However, I mean, there are meditations and stuff where you're just supposed to listen. Like you're literally just supposed to practice the art of listening. And so there's times for both, and it's all important. And if you can have mantra playing in your house just all the time, even at like a really low level, it's going to change your entire space.
Is this what you mean by infusing your life with mantra? Is that it's just, it's always going on in the background. There's always something, you know, it's beautiful music. It's working on elevating your consciousness And there's got to be a level of discipline that goes along with that. I've been really pondering a lot about the negative mind. I know that's something that they talk about as one of the 10 bodies in Kundalini, and the idea that the remedy really for if the negative mind is out of balance is discipline.
And mantra.
And mantra. There you go. So that's what I was going to say. There's something about taking the time to work with mantra that is the discipline, right? It's
absolutely. It absolutely it is, because you have to employ it. Like all of these things, it's nice to talk about. It's cool and mystical and interesting, but you have to employ it so that it works. It's a practice, and there's infinite opportunities to practice it. Like you could just be chanting Satnam, Satnam, Satnam mentally all the time if you wanted. I especially do that if I ever feel like the energy's a little off, or like an awkward feeling, or I feel uncomfortable. I'll just go Satnam, Satnam, Satnam in my mind, and then it transforms whatever energies. And like you should try that. If you're listening to this podcast, you are likely a very sensitive person. And so you'll see immediately how the energies transform when you employ mantra. And there are thousands of mantras, and it's like magic spells to me that they each do different things to convert reality in different ways. You know, there are ones that are specifically for the negative mind, to balance the negative mind, or to protect you, or to connect you to your own infinity, et cetera, et cetera. Prosperity, meditations, mantras, all of that.
I love it. Can you think of an example, either specific or even general, where music was transformative for your personal faith? And when I know oftentimes when we refer to faith, it's synonymous with religion, and that's not really the context I'm thinking right now. I know we've used that on the podcast before too, but in terms of faith, as in your relationship with these kind of benevolent universal forces, and choosing to see the magic or the mysticism that's around in your life.
Well, I think for me, the process of creating music is magical in and of itself. I think a lot of creators feel that way. It's like something's coming through, and you have the skills to make it happen, and you're creative, but it feels like it's something beyond you anyway, and like you're co-creating with, I don't know, with the infinite, with whatever gave you all of these gifts to be able to express yourself this way. So whenever I'm making music, especially when you get into that sweet groove, it feels like a completely, like, I guess I want to say like supernatural, but that's not exactly accurate, but like beyond me. I
think supernatural is a good word for it.
Yeah,
I really do. I do. I mean, for myself with my own, I'm a writer, and that's how I feel. Or even when if you're really meditating, or I used to be a professional dancer years ago before kids and all that. And that was my first experience of being like, I'm doing this dance with a force beyond me. There's a freedom that you find within the movement in certain moments, not always. A lot of it's very disciplined. A lot of it, you're worried about what are other people thinking about you. You're worried about the steps, but the moments where it's in its most pure form, it's pure it's a pure communion with the divine.
Yes.
You do that with music too. That's
absolutely.
When I listen to your music, that's what it sounds like from my perspective.
I love that, because that is how I feel, definitely. Especially making music like this, which is of a very high frequency. It, like, making all music feels good, but this is very elevating. And I remember when I was writing Guru Guru Wahe Guru, like my whole apartment became brighter. Like it looked like physically like the light, like there was more light in the apartment, and everything felt so soft and dreamy and like full of like love, and my heart was super open. And my cousin, even, she like knocked on the door, and then she was like, whoa, what's going on in here? And
isn't that amazing when it's actually tangible? Like you walk in and you're like, there is a literal physical shift going on, and I can see it with my own eyes, and this is crazy, right?
Yes, I love those moments. They're very confirmational, like, oh yes, what I feel is real. The rest of the time you have to like go on like really hardcore faith when you can't see it and feel it.
Yes. So I'd love to have you tell me and our listeners about your new album coming out. And I love that you picked the date 2/22/2020. So it's an album that is called Songs for My Teacher. So first question is just, tell me about that. And then, why did you pick that specific date?
Yeah. So Songs for My Teacher is an album that has, I'm going to tell you all about it before anyone knows. It has 3 songs on it. And they're all mantras that were requested by my teacher, Tej Kaur Khalsa, who wanted to use them for specific meditations. And so I wrote these songs. There's the Om Namo Guru Deva, Tantric Har, and there's the cremation mantra, which is Hari Nam Tat Sat Tat Sat Hari. And so they all correlate to specific meditations. It's like very purposeful album. Whereas my first album is like, oh, this feels great. I can dance. I'm going to drive my car, this music. This album, Songs for My Teacher, is going to take you into like a deep meditative place so that you can go really deep. Yeah, Songs for My Teacher. And my teacher is Tej, but my teacher is also Yogi Bhajan. My teacher is, the guru, the energy that brings the darkness to light. So it's like a kind of a devotional album to the infinite, to God.
I love that. And you picked the date 2/22/2020. That's a lot of 2s.
It is a lot of 2s. It's a good number of flow and allowing. And it's also my mom's birthday, which I thought was a really cool way to pay homage to her, my maker.
That's right. Your maker and your biggest, sounds like your biggest champion in terms of your music too.
Well, my dad's actually a really huge champion of my music too. So I'm lucky. I'm really lucky that way.
So let's talk a little bit about Kundalini yoga as a practice. And, you make really great Instagram TV guides of meditations that can be used in daily life. In fact, I've even referenced your content to some of my clients. So talk to me about how Kundalini yoga fits into your life. I mean, I know you've discussed briefly about how the mantra music comes from that lineage. And so obviously there's an element to the creativity. Is there anything more that you'd want to add about that?
Aside from Kundalini yoga has changed my entire life.
Well, maybe the question is, what was your life before it versus now?
Oh, sure. Well, I was always very spiritual and very open to learning about different kinds of energy work and different traditions and all that. But when I came to Kundalini yoga, it was so deeply transformative and healing, like right away. And it was at a time that I really needed that I went from I went to one class, and then after that I went to a 4-hour workshop the very next day. And then I got angry for like a month and a half, and I really needed to get angry and to release that, because when you hold on to that stuff, it becomes toxic. The energy becomes more dense. It becomes disease like 20 years later. And so I was really lucky to have found it and release all of this, clogged up emotion and start my healing process.
So this brings me to this faith crisis thread that I wanted to weave through this, because I know we talked about this in our pre-interview about faith crisis and this idea that oftentimes in our lives, we get a taste of something when we're in a crisis that helps us to feel the nature of God, right? That helps us to feel and taste the infinite. And then almost immediately, like you said, I love your honesty. And then I was pissed for like a whole month. And I find that to be my case too. I mean, part of the reason we started this podcast, my co-host Amy and I, we often talk about faith crisis in relation to leaving the Mormon church and unwinding certain faith patterns and systems that felt really oppressive, while trying to separate the good things that we want to keep with us. Because it's not 100% bad, right? Like there's always the polarities. But the faith crisis comes in so many forms. And sometimes I think it comes in really strong waves when you're having a spiritual awakening, right? These high highs and low lows. So then what was your experience with your faith unfolding through your spiritual, creative, artistic pursuits? Like what happened after the anger? And do you see that reemerge from time to time?
Well, that first year that I was doing Kundalini yoga, it helped me heal so much and connect me in a very strong way to my faith.
And when you say your faith, you're talking
to that experience of God.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. And also, it helped me a lot with depression and just being like a very moody, artistic person. Sometimes that comes with the bag, going through low lows. Not that I went through any fun high highs, but like just periods of time where the low lows. And the Kundalini yoga practice shifted my equilibrium. Kundalini yoga, along with a lot of White Tantric, that my baseline was higher so that the low lows were no longer that low anymore. They're just not as, melt my face off low. The equilibrium's different now. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes. So right, because you're in a place where you can kind of pop yourself out of the drama for a moment.
Yeah.
And you can see it for what it is rather than only living in it and wondering like, why is this happening to me? Right. It kind
But
of
that
gives you
said,
the power back.
this fall I had like a period of like low lows because as we had talked about before, I get cluster headaches, and they're these extremely excruciating, debilitating kind of headaches that really interrupt your life, and they come out of nowhere and they last for a period of time and then they're gone. And it's like, it's just surprise again. And then it's like you're feeling like you're being tormented and you have no idea why. You're like, what did I do? And so
you never know when they're going to hit, right? It's like you have to just live your life like it's you're a moving target.
Yeah. And it was going on for months. And even with all of my different practices, with my Kundalini yoga and with my work as Litios Light Priestess, I got really depressed for like 2 weeks. And I just was barely giving any energy to my meditations. And like that to me was like a real crisis, because I was like, what, I couldn't get out of my perspective of the situation. Why is this happening to me? Like, why have you forsaken me? And then my friend just called me on the phone and they were like, you need to meditate. You need to do this meditation every single day. And I was like, thank God for friends and community. And so I started doing this meditation every single day, and it shifted me out of that like dark place. And even though I was still getting headaches, I was in a higher frequency, and there was like enough shift that I was like, oh, okay, I can live my life. I can keep going. And it wasn't like, oh, I feel God so intensely, I'm in this bliss, cloud. It was like, okay, every day is a practice that I need to get connected. It's like the non-glamorous part of faith and like the non-glamorous part of life, where you're not like, I'm at the top of the mountain and here's how I did it. It's like every day I need to connect and I need to commit and I need to do this meditation so that I can be connected and like get out of my little small minded place. There was this Yogi Bhajan lecture I was listening to where he was like, in shape, the earth is round, but in experience, the earth is flat. And that's like life. And to me, that was like, yeah, in shape, like life is amazing. And, especially when you're connected and look at this earth, this playground, this paradise for our souls to have this experience. But in experience, life is flat unless you feel connected, which makes you feel alive, So like this time of going through this difficult time is about like bulldozing through that life is flat. Like, no, I'm going to connect till I'm out of this. You know what I mean?
Yes, that's very well said. I have a few questions to follow up with this. You mentioned Kundalini, and then you mentioned and a lot of White Tantric. So for our listeners who don't know, what is the difference between White Tantric versus regular Kundalini yoga, or is it the one and the same? What would be the difference?
That's a good question. And I might not be the best person to give the answer on this, but White Tantric is not the same as Kundalini yoga, but it's like adjunct to Kundalini yoga. It's a practice of a partner meditation, and it's for either a whole day or for 3 days for like 11 hours a day, where a specific kind of energy comes through. Like you have to sit in these specific rows with the female and male polarity. You have to wear specific clothing, and a diagonal energy comes through, and it just like wipes your subconscious. It's deeply cleansing and transformational, to the point that it takes like some people say 40 days, some people say even 90 days to completely integrate what happens to you during that day of White Tantric.
And do you find that so I'm assuming that on the day that you choose to meditate for 11 hours, or for the 3 days that you choose to meditate for 11 hours, that you reach some sort of a euphoria or some sort of a bliss state. And then when you say it takes up to 90 days to integrate, is that, in my experience, I think integration can be some of the hardest work that we do, right? In my experience, the last 5 or 6 years of really leaning into this intuitive path and, being a channel and being a shaman and all the things, that every time I get greater light and knowledge, there is a lag period where, and I find it, if I track it, it's been maybe it's 2 or 3 times a year where I have those moments and they come out of nowhere. And it usually has to do with some sort of astrological transit or something that's going on collectively that just wipes me flat. And then I'm like, and even to your point, when you were talking about, then you have good friends who say, you need to do this. I find that when I'm in those states, I don't even want to meditate. I can't even bring myself to do it because I'm in such a dark place for a few days.
Yes.
And I think, and eventually you get yourself out. That's like when I call my teacher and say, can you help me move through this? And then, you kind of work your way out of whatever it is. And then the integration process, like you've said, in where you're saying, then the highs and the lows are a little more palatable. But while you're in the experience, you never really know how long it's going to take you to do the full integration. And on some level, we're integrating probably until the day we die, right?
Oh, yeah.
So when you're in that tantric place, how is it for you then when you say integrate, would you agree it's the same for you as it is the way I describe it? Or how is it for you?
Oh, for me, every time is different. Sometimes you feel like you got hit by a truck after tantric. Sometimes you emerge feeling fantastic. I've met multiple people who are like, I will never do that again. That was the worst thing ever. And then, a couple tantrics later, they're there. It can be really intense. It just depends. I had a really intense integration experience after this one training, actually not for Kundalini Yoga. It was for the Diamond Christ Light Priestess training. Because, as I've said, I'm a Litios Diamond Light Priestess. I'm also a Litios Diamond Christ Light Priestess.
So let's talk about that. What does this mean? And how did you come to find this type of technology? And what's the difference between Diamond Light Priestess, and Diamond Light Christ Priestess? Can you explain that?
Yes. So, let's see, how do we attack this? Let's see. Litios is a spiritual company that was founded by this mother and father in Germany. The mother, Antje, she's a channel medium. And all of these lightful beings have come through her, most notably Light Lord Metatron, also known as Archangel Metatron. And he always comes through her before anyone else. And he bestowed upon her a way of infusing crystals with angelic technologies. So they have Litios light crystals for the new age, which are these crystals that are infused with frequencies from different light beings from like the 9th dimension and higher. And along with the light crystals, they also have meditations and they have seminars. Through Antje, Metatron brought forth the training for the Diamond Light Priestess. And so that's the training that I went through.
How did you find it? If they're in Germany, you're in LA, like how did that come into your orbit?
At the Conscious Life Expo in LA, like years ago, I saw them and I saw this crystal that was like, I was so drawn to it. It had dolphins inside of it. And I was like, I need that. And I didn't know why. And the son of the founders, Gregor, he was like, are you sure? Like, maybe can I interest you in this other crystal? And I was like, I need this. And then he offered to do like an activation on me in my chakras. And after that, I was like so elevated and so feeling such bliss. I like invited them, like he and his coworker. I was like, do you guys need a place to stay after the expo? Like, do you want to crash on my couch? Can I take you to dinner? Like, I was like, I need to be around this energy more. And then Gregor and I became like best friends, and I went back and forth to Germany, and I sang at a lot of the Litios seminars and took a lot of the seminars and became a light priestess. That's how that happened.
Wow, that's really interesting. It's interesting how the universe kind of brings people together. I've found that to be the case even with the podcast, that a lot of our guests are from all over the world, and it's always really cool how we get connected, whether it's through Instagram or it's a friend of a friend recommends this person or that person. And I just always feel like this is such a cool thing when you're on this spiritual path. It can sometimes feel very isolating when you get started, because oftentimes you step into it and not everyone that's in your circle of friends or influence is on the same path as you. And so you're like, who do I talk to about this? And then all of a sudden, here you are. And maybe in LA, it's different. Like, I don't know. I know a lot of people in LA are really open to this, just esoteric, new age stuff and yoga and all of that. But in other parts of the country, it can feel very isolating for people. And I just find it to be really cool that we live in this technology age where we can so quickly and easily connect with others that are into what we're into.
Yeah, absolutely. And because the deeper you go, the more like narrow the friendship group can become, because it's like you're becoming more inundated with very specific kinds of esoteric knowledge and upgrades and up-leveling. And so it's like the universe is bringing you people from these pockets of the planet that are resonating with you.
Yes, absolutely. So what does it mean then to be a Diamond Light Priestess?
So in the training for becoming a Metatron Diamond Light Priestess, you learn all about your energetic makeup, all about your energy bodies, similarly to, in Kundalini Yoga, how we learn about our 10 bodies. You learn about all of your chakras, and far beyond your main chakras, your ethereal chakras, earth chakras, your diamond light vehicle, certain sacred geometric shapes that we talk about are also a part of our energetic makeup. So you learn all of these different structures that compose you, where different energies can be. So then you learn about the different energies that can be causing you burdens, I guess, let's say, energies that are not in the light. And you learn about all the various different categories of what that could be, and then how to find them using a pendulum. And then you learn about all the host of lightful beings that you can call upon, these energies, these frequencies, to help liberate you from these specific other energies. And you learn about also how to program yourself with very high light codes, and even onto a DNA level, how to alter your DNA and reprogram yourself and other people.
And what is if you don't mind sharing, what is the process of that? Is it through like a guided meditation? Is it is it through sound and frequency? Is it through certain movements? What is that experience like?
What is the experience like when you're like receiving Litios healing?
That or yes. And just like, is there something that our listeners could take with them through this podcast? Or is it something that you have to experience with someone who's been trained? Does that make sense?
Oh, yes. I think it's the most beneficial to experience it with someone who's like working within this tradition. However, when you see a Litios booth and you buy a light crystal, there are meditations that go with the light crystals, and beyond meditations, they're transmissions. So when you connect and you read these meditations and you are, holding your light crystal, you can have an experience of this energy. You don't need to like go see a light priestess or a light priest. However, I think that's even more beneficial because we can go deeper and we can find energies that have been like lodged in you for even lifetimes, and help to liberate those energies and connect you to your divine life path. We can facilitate things for you that are beyond. But having that experience for yourself, even if when you read a meditation or you're connecting to your light crystal, is invaluable. Like your experience is the most telling, and you're the authority of your own life. So no matter like what I can tell you, all this information, what's most important is your experience. Like when you're doing Kundalini yoga, your experience of that or of these kinds of meditations.
I love that. Now, you brought up that you were learning from this German couple. You said mother and father. I'm assuming they're, older because we're probably middle-aged, right? So they're older than us. And you had mentioned in our pre-interview that you were a Reformed Jew. So talk to me a little bit about what it was like to learn this Litios Light Priestess lineage that's rooted in Metatron and Christ as someone who was raised in the Jewish faith.
Yeah, I had so much resistance all the time, every meditation. There was something in me that felt the light that was coming through and felt the high frequency. And that's just what I went on, because everything else was just a negative mind, just spouting off, making any excuse to not keep going. And I would just sit there and just keep going, even though I was having a horrible time. And I also, when I was with Gregor, because we went out for a while, I would always find myself just making these snide comments about Germany and about Germans, because I was raised to not like German people, having, some of my family were slaughtered in the Holocaust. And he would just be like, I'm sorry, like, what do you want me to say? And I realized that every time he said he was sorry, it never fulfilled what I was hoping to feel, like a sense of peace or something, or it never fulfilled me. And so then I was like, okay, we have to do a bunch of meditations and clear this ancestral, programming, the things that my ancestors went through. And I did a lot of meditation on it, and it cleared. And I never thought that I would feel that way, that I'm like, oh yeah, Germany. Yeah, I go to Germany like a bunch of times a year, and I stay with this German family, and I learn like this whole lineage of light priestess stuff from them, and
rooted in kind of Christian mythology, right? Like with all the Christian symbolism and all of that. Yes. Oh my gosh. In Germany.
Wow. And that's the Christ Light Priest training is a slightly different training. And I did that training, even though, and I don't know, like how, I'm just going to be honest, because that's all I do. Was like, no, Jesus, no, N-O. Like, there are so many horrific things done in the name of Jesus on this planet that were done to my people, that are still done in the name of Jesus. I was like, no, but I knew that I needed to take this training somehow. And so I went through this training, which I also did not enjoy at all. And a month after this training, the Christ energy of bliss, just that bliss, golden bliss, opened up in my being. And for like a month and a half, I was floating in ecstasy. And it was like a way I've never felt before. I felt very confident in myself. I loved myself unquestionably, and I loved everyone. And I just wanted to be of service and share all the tools that got me there. And then, then it, like, as we were talking about in the pre-interview, it kind of like settled down. But I know I still have work to do, because I still have it's very strong programming when you've come from a certain tradition or a certain ancestry, and you have to fight that resistance to liberate yourself, because that what you're getting into is a good thing. You know what I mean?
Yes. I mean, I relate to this on such a deep level, because I felt like when I moved to LA, this was years ago, from Utah, Mormons they have a really strong persecution lineage as well, right? Because they had to go to the desert in order to do their religion. So there's this sense of like, we're persecuted, we're a peculiar people, you're always kind of like subtly embarrassed to be like, I'm a Mormon, but then you're also like, I'm a Mormon, like when you're a Mormon, right? So you're raised in these certain ways. And so I remember moving to LA and becoming really good friends with a lot of Jews, because I felt like I just got it. I was like, okay, in a weird way, and also because Mormons kind of think that they're like the original Jews, right? Like they're like, we're from the tribe of Abraham and Israel or whatever. So yeah. And I've seen in my shamanic training and working with clients and all of that there are these lineages where you are, they are, the systems are kind of run and that we carry that with us throughout our lives. Right. So you as a Reformed Jew, and I mean, the Jewish people have been persecuted in almost every time. I'm a big history nerd. I just love to read about it. And every time I'm like, I want to study, the ancient Rome. It's like, oh yeah, the Jews are persecuted. I want to study, I want to study, like, I just came back from Spain, right? I want to study, the golden age of Islam in Andalusia. Oh, the Jews were persecuted. The Jews during the Spanish Inquisition, they were sent away again. They were sent out of, everywhere they went. Right.
And then a people called the chosen people to be constantly persecuted.
Right. And I mean, so you think, and then here's the Holocaust that happened. It's just horrific in our, our grandparents' lifetime that occurred. And there's still, obviously things that are going on the planet today that are bad. But in terms of what we're talking about right here with this, I think it's so fascinating that you would find what has helped to give you whatever, if it's a fully rounded view of spirituality, a way of finding healing is by going through this other path. And perhaps Christians would be like, see, she found Jesus.
Right,
but from my perspective, it's like, no, there's a polarity there. There's a polarity of you had all the beautiful things about Judaism that you were raised with, and I'm sure some things you didn't like. And then you found this kind of Eastern path through Kundalini Yoga. And then you found this Diamond Light Priestess, which is the Christian path. And now you've got this full pie chart of what's available to you. And now you're looking through this lens that's the same way. In the same way that when I left Mormonism, the way I found kind of the other part of me that felt like it had died was by diving deep into Incan shamanism and this kind of Eastern Kundalini, because it's like giving me the full picture now. So anyway, oh my gosh, I love that story. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because elevation is my religion. So anything that is going to elevate me, I have to incorporate that into my practice, into my schema of spirituality. So even though I have tons of ego resistance and I have my ego pain body and all the ancestral components that, make it more difficult to accept certain technologies and light from certain technologies, like when elevation is your religion, that is what is guiding you. Beyond like the ego stuff, that is going to sort itself out because I will keep transforming. You know what I mean?
Well, and there becomes less of an emphasis on being right about a certain way of doing things and just looking for truth wherever you find it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because that's what I find. Every time I travel to a new place, I'm like, I just look for I go by feeling. And I think, there's some places that I've been that are like big holy churches that don't feel holy to me at all. Then there's other places that feel really strongly sacred.
Yes.
You find these pockets, places. And then what you'd find is when you start to travel or you be around different cultures of people, is that it's like, oh my gosh, there's literally just like the most beautiful truth everywhere. But it can be hard to access when we are looking through our very filtered experience.
Yes. And that also taught me a lesson about victimhood, is that, when you come from a culture that has been oppressed a lot, or you're a certain demographic, a minority, or your orientation is, you've been persecuted a lot, like you can have a victim mentality. Oh, my people died in the Holocaust. It's this culture's fault. And then to heal that and to empower yourself, it actually has to come from within you. No one else can heal that for you. No amount of apologizing is going to heal that for you. It's about your own experience of healing yourself and, finding the power within you again. You won't find the power within yourself if you're looking for someone else to fix it, even though it doesn't seem fair. You know what I mean? It's the experience of empowering yourself again. And that's so important, especially in this age where there's like a lot of victim complex, and that has to be transcended. by the
and
person.
a lot of true pain, right? Like they're experiencing real pain. I think that's how we pop it up. We have to be able to pop it up on the soul level and be like, well, what is the lesson for incarnating into this existence, whatever your existence is, right? Because there's obviously something to be gleaned and learned from that. But, whew, wow, Libby, that was awesome.
Before we part, I wanted to just have you tell our listeners, how can they connect with you? And do you offer private consults with the Litios Light Priestess? Do you teach groups, trainings? Like how can they reach out to you? And what do you have coming up?
Well, coming up, I think this podcast will be coming out after this because it's this weekend is the Conscious Life Expo at the LAX Hilton. And I'll be with the Litios booth there. And we have 2 lectures at 6 p.m. on Saturday, which is Liberating Yourself from Extraterrestrial Implants, and Sunday, which...
Well, tell me about that. Wait a minute. Yeah, hold on. Tell me, what do you mean by extraterrestrial implants?
So when I was talking about energies that can be like in your aura, I was like not going too deep, but I know that you like to go deep. One of those energies are extraterrestrial beings that are not in the light and their manipulations. And they can be anything from, dark seals or dark ships, batteries, receiving stations, sending stations, implants, devices, all the other kinds of structures.
When you say devices, are you talking about like our devices that we use, or are you talking about devices from out in the ethers?
Like interdimensional devices. Like you can be implanted with devices that send information about you or receive information that influences you. And it's very likely that you have no idea that it's there. Maybe, for example, you could be really, really tired and perhaps you have a ship that is attached to you and is siphoning off your energy using it like a battery. And so you just need to know how to clean yourself from everything so that you can be empowered and, liberate yourself. You can do that.
I find this to be interesting because I think you see this concept, whether you're a listener and you're like, wait a minute, I don't believe in alien ships attaching, or you do, or that's like right up your alley. It seems like you could use that in an archetypal sense, right? Like you could use that in terms of, we see it it play out in basically all of the Christian mythology with, you have like the devil and the demons, and you have the like that's your darkness, and then you have the light. You see it in other indigenous cultural myths where you talk about the underworld, or the people who are, I'm trying to think of some off the top of my head and I'm drawing a blank here, but you get the idea that these polarities, however you want to label them, are things that I've seen, especially throughout other lineages, where you talk about clearing entities, or like in my shamanic training, you talk about clearing energetic entities, and it can be anything from, you can label it as specific as you want, but it also could be used. I'm just trying to think of how we can package it in.
That makes it more accessible or digestible.
Yeah. Where it's like, it can just be as simple as, we all have density that builds up in our bodies, and that has to be removed, or else it sucks our life force. Right?
Yeah, that is true.
Does that sound like it makes sense?
It does make sense. Anything that is burdening you, you have the power to remove it and liberate yourself. It helps infinitely to be, more educated about it. And we both have our different lineages that we connect to that allow us that information to get rid of those specific things. So yeah,
I'll tell you what, girl, I wish I could come to the expo this weekend. That sounds really fascinating. I love to hear more about that. Okay, so you're at the expo this weekend, and what else? How else can they connect with you? I know your new album's coming out on February 22nd.
Right.
You're on Instagram. Where can they find you on Instagram?
Oh, at OSLEE _music. At OSLEE _music. OSLEE music is my Instagram. You can connect with me there. That's actually a great place to connect with me, as I'm very active on it. And also right now I am doing a 40-day practice on Instagram Live of a particular meditation. It's the complete Adi mantra for individual meditation. And it correlates to one of the mantras on my album. So I've been playing this song every day, even though it's unreleased. And this meditation specifically connects you to your higher consciousness and to God, faith, spirit, however you like to name it. And it gives you guidance and direction and perspective. So I'm really glad I'm doing it right now, because like we've been talking about, I really need that right now. I need to connect every day and like feel that support and feel held. And so it's an amazing meditation if you feel you need that as well. It also gives you, by the grace of Guru Ram Dass, Yogi Bhajan said, it will give you all of the spiritual knowledge that has ever existed on earth and will ever exist. And that will be seated in you. So it's very mystical meditation.
I love it. And I love that you bring up the point in this moment, like right before you're launching another album, and you're being so public and clear about speaking about your path, who you are, the path that you're on, that there is a necessity that as we go through that we create environments for ourselves where we feel held, right? Because I think a lot of our listeners are in places where it's like, how public do we want to be about talking about our path? How do we want this to translate into who we are? And I love that you brought that up, that it's whatever we do to create a framework to be held is really wise, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And especially like how we were talking about that other day about community. Having community is so integral to feeling uplifted, elevated, and held. Whether your community is, like my community is when I go to Kundalini Yoga in the mornings at Nine Treasures, and I see, my whole community. And then I have my Litios community, people who can see you and be like, checking up on you and speaking a language that you speak, whether it's in person or online. It's very, very important to mental health.
I couldn't agree more. I love that you brought that up. And I'm really excited to see and follow your career and see where your music goes. I think you're such a talent, and I'm so grateful that you were able to join me here today on the Intentionists podcast. And for all of you listening, I'll be linking to Libby on this week whenever we release this, which will be probably in a few days, maybe a week or two. And you'll be able to connect with her on our Intentionists podcast Instagram, and check out her music. I listen to it on Spotify. What is your preferred way for listeners to support you? Is there a platform where the artist gets more support versus less? Because I would just direct people that way, right?
Yeah, there is. Actually, Bandcamp is the greatest platform for artists. It's very fair and really supports artists. It must be like built by artists as well, because it is the best. So if you want to hop over to Bandcamp on February 22nd, my album will be available there. It will also be available on all major platforms, including Spotify.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Libby. I really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I love what you do. I could talk to you for hours. So thank you for having me. And yes, if anyone has any questions or wants to connect with me, please feel free to reach out. I'd love to know you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Before we part, we'd like to say thanks for listening, and we hope you'll connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. We would love to hear from you and appreciate all feedback, shares, and likes.
To learn more and subscribe to our newsletter, visit Intentionists.com. And no matter where you are or what you're creating, we send you love and invite you to breathe and begin.
See you next week.